Hello and welcome to the Be Mobile Show. It is Alicia and Brody, and what we're all about is exercise and health for adults 55 plus. And today we're talking about the brain, aren't we, Brody?
Yeah, we're talking about the brain, and in particular the brain-changing benefits of exercise, how exercise affects your brain. And in particular, this study that was published just last month from some researchers at the University of Queensland here in Australia, which is quite an interesting study. So yes, welcome if you're just joining us. Welcome to our members and 8-week Fit and Strong participants. We'll get into that education topic and then we'll answer any questions at the end. We've already got one question that came in earlier today we're going to answer, but if anyone else has any questions related to that topic or just more general fitness, exercise, health questions, let us know in the comments and we'll try and get to them.
Indeed, indeed. So, Brody, we're going to get into this study that you've looked at, but first of all, we're talking about a specific, or actually, let's share a fun. We've got a fun fact. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Now, the human brain it's the most complex structure known to exist in the entire universe. And listen to these stats. It contains around 86 billion neurons, forming over 100 trillion connections.
There's a lot going on up there.
My brain can't wrap itself around that.
No, but it is pretty incredible that it's the most complex thing that we know exists in the universe. The most complex thing we've been able to discover is we're walking around with
and it exists within ourselves.
All very cool.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone saying hi in the comments. Val, Norma, Leslie, Gillian, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so that's a little fun fact. But Alicia, in particular, what are we talking about? We're going to focus on this area of the brain, which is called your hippocampus.
Yes. So the hippocampus, should we get up an image of
I can bring up the image.
Hippocampus just so we can see where it is. It's only a small structure. It's the blue structure there, but it's a very important structure, isn't it, Brody?
Yeah, it's that sort of, that turquoise, aqua blue sort of shape structure there. It's quite small. It's in part of your temporal lobe there, right? So the side of your brain, and it's quite deep. And it's quite a complex structure with a few roles. One thing it's very known for and renowned for is its role in learning and memory. So that's what often people will know it for, its particular involvement in memory. But it's actually not just that, it's also got a role in spatial navigation, in emotional behavior regulation, and it sort of helps regulate some other complex brain functions. There we go, there's it not doing its job, but
And as you say, it's involved in learning and memory, which means that it's the earliest and most severely affected structure in disorders like Alzheimer's disease and also epilepsy, so those sort of neuropsychiatric disorders. So really important to try to maintain the health of the hippocampus, but can we do that?
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. But I know, Alicia, you just read that, but I'll just repeat it. It's the earliest and most severely affected with things like Alzheimer's. So it's the first thing to get hit, and it gets hit the hardest. That's what affects our memory so much, our ability to learn new things and remember things once we have something like dementia or Alzheimer's. So just to really hammer home that point, I'll take away this image of the hippocampus, get back to us. So we're going to talk about the effects of exercise on the brain, the positive effects, and then we'll get into some of that research. So firstly, that exercise helps your hippocampus to grow. There's quite a bit of research looking at the effects of exercise on your brain, and one finding is it can quite literally grow that hippocampus.
That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah, so you can actually grow your hippocampus, and so more exercise can lead to a bigger, healthier brain. But we're not saying that exercise alone can prevent Alzheimer's and dementia, but it can have a protective effect. Like exercise is going to help to grow your hippocampus, and if that is bigger, the longer it's going to take for that neurodegeneration to occur in diseases like Alzheimer's.
So even if you get dementia or Alzheimer's, it starts to get affected. It's bigger, it can last longer, it can have better memory for longer. And this is this concept of physiological reserve, which we've talked about when it comes to muscle fitness, bone density, it's a term we often talk about, is having enough sort of in reserve that if it takes a hit from injury or illness that you can survive that, withstand that, and come out the other side with functional ability. It's the same for your brain, and in particular this part of your brain. The bigger, stronger, healthier it is, the more of a hit it can withstand, and you still be okay on the other side of it. So that is the power of exercise when it comes to your brain. But we're going to get to, in particular, this research, Alicia. So as we said, just last month, in July of this year, it was published by some researchers at the University of Queensland here in Australia.
Yeah, and it received a little bit of publicity. There were some articles on it, so it might even be something that you've read about, but we're going to get into the details of what type of exercise produced the greatest benefits.
Yeah, so what did this study do? They got 3 different types of exercise programs over 6 months, and they wanted to look at what they call hippocampal dependent cognition. So they were particularly looking at how well the hippocampus was functioning, how that was affecting cognition in elderly individuals. So they got subjects that they from age 65 to 85 with no cognitive deficits, which the researchers classified as elderly, and they were randomly assigned into one of these 3 exercise interventions. So they either did a low intensity exercise intervention, a medium intensity, or a high intensity. Alicia, do you want to say what each of those meant, what that subject actually did?
Yes, so the first one, a low intensity exercise intervention, was predominantly balance and stretching.
Yeah.
The second group, which was medium intensity, was brisk walking on a treadmill. And the third, which was the high intensity group, that involved 4 rounds of running on a treadmill at near maximal exertion, so really hard, high intensity effort there.
Yeah, so those are the 3 groups. They followed them for 6 months. So each participant had about 72 sessions over the 6 months. So it's about 3 sessions a week of exercise for 6 months, which they had supervised with the research team. And they had 151 subjects take part overall in the test. At the start and then throughout those 6 months, they did cognitive testing of particularly the hippocampal function. They also did blood collection, brain MRIs, and although the exercise only went for 6 months, they did all those same tests for 5 years after this intervention started. So although this research was just published, the actual study started more than 5 years ago. 6 months of exercise, but 5 years of following up, brain testing, MRIs, all sorts of other blood work and things to see how those subjects did over the 5 years.
And the results.
Yes, we can get to those results.
After 6 months, only the high intensity group displayed significant improvement in hippocampal function. So that's interesting, isn't it? How dependent upon the intensity of the exercise the benefits were.
Yeah, so there's the high intensity exercise.
So that was the stimulus that was needed. The lower intensity and the medium intensity didn't produce the benefits that the high intensity group did.
So that finding is maybe what you'd expect, maybe not that surprising. And that in itself is interesting, that in the 6 month exercise, the highest intensity group had the best benefit for their brain. Probably not that surprising. What's really cool is what happened from them following up the data for 5 years. And that's where the even more sort of wow finding is that even after 5 years, the MRIs and the testing they did from that high intensity exercise group showed that they maintained their brain volume in those specific areas, including the hippocampus, and the sort of the functional connectivity between their brain networks was shown to have maintained over 5 years. Whereas in the other 2 groups, that declined a little bit over the 5 years, as you'd expect normal with aging, with 5 years of aging in this population. So the high intensity group only did the exercise for 6 months. They didn't keep up their exercise, but even 5 years later, the benefits of that 6 month period of exercise were still seen, which that itself is a pretty amazing finding.
That really is amazing.
And we have a quote here from Professor Bartlett, one of the researchers. Alicia, if you want to read this, he's one of the guys who did the study.
Yeah, so we followed up with them 5 years after the program, and incredibly, they still had improved cognition, even if they hadn't kept up with the exercises. So I think, like you say, Brodie, that really is quite remarkable. And in terms of breaking down exactly what that high intensity group did, they did 4 rounds of a 4-minute effort on the treadmill. So
3 times a week.
3 times a week.
So
we're talking not even 20 minutes of exercise, hard exercise.
Yeah.
You know,
big effort. Near maximum effort.
Near maximum effort, but time-wise, I mean, we're talking about
2 to 3 times, 20 to 25 minutes a week.
45 minutes, just to tick over 45 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable.
Yes.
Now I pulled this graph from the study. It looks a little bit complex, but the main thing you need to see is just the 3 coloured lines basically representing the 3 groups. and the time period in months. So they see that 48 to 60 months is the sort of 5 years later. And you can see that for the low intensity group, the green there, and the medium intensity group, the blue, there was a little bit of an improvement in brain function that maintained for a year or so, and then it was back to baseline or a little bit worse than baseline, basically. But the red line, that high intensity exercise group, much bigger improvement in brain function, and that maintained even after they stopped exercise for a long, long time. So that graph is, I think, pretty powerful.
Pretty powerful, yeah. And I think that like the big takeaway here is that like any high intensity exercise you can get in is going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's just a few minutes here and there, you know, going up a flight of stairs, anything that you can do to get that stimulus of getting your heart rate up and working at that level of effort's going to be beneficial for your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really interesting research, really cool. Now, there's so many benefits of exercise. If you go from doing nothing to doing 2 10-minute moderate, like slow walks a week, that's good for your health. That's improving your health. So wherever you're at now, whatever exercise you're doing is good. Any more you can do is even better. There's loads of health benefits that come from exercise, not just related to your brain. This is just one example of one structure and area within your brain with which it's helpful to do the sort of higher intensity exercise. And there's lots of benefits of doing more higher intensity exercise. But anything you're doing is great. Any exercise you do is going to start to have benefits to your health in lots of various ways. So it's not just about doing as much high intensity as you can.
No, that's right. Like you say, there's a wealth of evidence that we know and we often talk about if you've heard us speak before, that exercise at any intensity, whatever physical activity you can get in, there's loads of health benefits associated with that.
But this is good motivation for if you're suffering through a high intensity cardio workout, climbing up some stairs, some hills, whatever you're doing, that the benefits are worth it. I'll just have a look through the comments here. Alicia, a few people saying hi. I won't get to everyone, but thank you all for joining. Carol says, happy to be able to join today live as I am now retired. And then a few people saying, congrats, Carol, that's awesome.
Congratulations, Carol.
Ollie says, more time for exercise, Carol. Very good there, Ollie. A few others saying hello and thank you, great. A few greetings, Sarah, Karen, Pam, everyone, thank you for joining. Okay, no specific questions in the comments yet, but yeah, if you do have any questions about that study or that research, please pop them in the comments and we'll be happy to answer as best we can. We're not neuroscientists, but we do know a little bit. So if you've got questions, let us know. With that, Alicia, that's enough for that topic. We'll move on to...
Yeah, and we do have a question that was submitted prior by Trish, one of our members. And I wonder if, Trish, if you are here for the live, we would love a little bit more information if possible. But Trish's question was, wanting speed and strength for my running. Yeah. Any advice will be welcomed.
So we'll just take it quite generally in that if someone's a regular runner, like Trish, and it sounds like she wants to get more speed with her running, be able to run faster perhaps, increase her speed, and also feel strong enough and have the strength to do that. What are some suggestions and what things that we could do that might help? Yeah,
so I think we could increase the intensity.
Yeah.
Of running, and of course if this is talking about somebody that is already running and conditioned to running, because it's something we want to build up to, but doing interval work where we're working at increasing the speed, so maybe like going fast or at 70 or 80% for a period of time or a certain distance, and then walking, having a rest and then doing it again.
Yeah, so definitely breaking the run up into chunks. Let's assume Trish does a couple of runs a week of like 3 to 5 Ks at just sort of an average sort of steady pace where she's not paying too much attention to her speed. She just kind of goes out and runs and gets back and goes, I'd like to do that a bit faster. Yeah, as Alicia said, doing little blocks of higher intensity with a bit of a rest period. So it might be 1 minute or 2 minutes or 1 kilometre or half a kilometre. It doesn't really matter. You can just kind of pick chunks that make sense to you and go, for that 1 kilometre, I'm going to go at a much higher effort, like a 7, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 effort maybe even, and then do a period where you back off and go much slower, or even do a walk recovery. So you could do faster run for 1 kilometre, walk for half a kilometre, or something like that. The exact time and structure of it probably isn't too important, but it's just mixing up some higher speed with some lower speed.
Yeah, so having that variation in the speed of your running. Yeah. And another way to increase that speed and intensity is also to do hill sprints.
Yeah.
So they're very intense.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, sprinting on flat ground's intense, but if you really want to ramp it up, you can do it up a hill. And again, you can do that in an interval format where you're running up for a certain distance or amount of time, and then perhaps walking back down and doing that again and repeating that.
So you could do that with hills or stairs, similar sort of thing, where you do a good hard effort going up, and then you're sort of coming back down can be your recovery period where you go a bit slower and easier. And doing sort of repeated bouts of that will help with muscular strength and power, as well as just improving the speed at which you can run.
But I would advise to start slow and just see how you go with that, because if you're not used to doing that higher intensity speed work, I'd just try a small amount and see how you respond to that and build up slowly.
And just doing it on relatively flat ground to start with.
Yeah, I wouldn't start with the hills.
Yeah, the hills and stairs is a sort of more advanced way to then progress your overall sort of speed and power. And in terms of strength, any lower body strengthening is generally good for runners, so just the stuff you're doing in your Be Mobile strength workouts, your squats, lunges, split squats, deadlift, all that sort of stuff is going to be helpful. You probably, if you're doing your 2 Be Mobile strength sessions a week, you probably don't need to do much more strength on top of that. You certainly could. You could do a 3rd session a week perhaps, but other than that, that's covering a lot of the muscular strength you'd need.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay.
Any
Great,
other
I'll just check the comments. There? Kathleen saying hi, a few other people saying hi. Kathleen says, how can I increase walking speed? I've slowed down so much over the past 2 or 3 years. I have osteoarthritis in both knees. Very similar answer, Kathleen, regarding that we just gave regarding running you could do for walking. So if you were going to go out for walks, you would have periods of increased speed. You might do 1 minute, 2 minutes at a hard, brisk walk, power walking, really giving it your all, and then have a period of a bit slower to sort of recover, and repeating that over time will help with the speed.
Yeah.
And hills and stairs also apply. Just if you can tolerate it, if your knees can tolerate it, walking up slight slope stairs as well increases your strength and power a little bit more. So both those things would help your walking speed. And likewise, doing your strength training, getting stronger with regular strength training as well.
Definitely. Okay, so we have a question here from Karen.
Yeah.
According to my Apple Watch, my heart rate goes quite high when I'm doing a set in strength training. Can we class this as high intensity, or is that cheating? Okay,
that's a good question.
I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, I think, I wear an Apple Watch as well, and it's important to remember that they're not entirely accurate. So I think they give you a guide for your heart rate, but it's not always the most accurate measure of our heart rate.
That's a good point to consider. Yep.
So can we class this as high intensity activity?
Essentially, yes. Because it's physical activity that you're doing, and when we talk about high intensity for aerobic activity, generally we're basing that off heart rate, or off your heart rate relative to your potential heart rate maximum or sort of heart rate peak. So if you're doing physical activity and we're trusting the Apple Watch's heart rate is pretty accurate, then it essentially does count as sort of high intensity aerobic exercise as well as strength training. So that's really good.
Yeah. And if, I guess if you wanted to do, if you can, it's good to do both strength and cardio. And if you were specifically wanting to get more cardio in terms of being able to walk for a longer distance or something like that, it would be better to, or not better, but it would be beneficial to walk and get in your cardio and build up that way.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that your heart's working hard in those strength sessions and you're getting that high intensity hit from that.
Yeah, and the guidelines currently say, like, when it says the 150 minutes a week of moderate aerobic activity, and it says including muscle strengthening activities twice a week. It doesn't necessarily say you have to do muscle strengthening outside of that 150. So in that way, some of that 150 of moderate or 75 minutes minimum of the vigorous intensity cardio could be doing resistance training type stuff. So you are kind of getting both with that sort of style of workout. So
yeah.
Great questions, everyone. Thank you. Checking the comments, I'm not seeing any other questions, Alicia. So I think that's where we'll wrap it up for today. We've just got a nice little finisher to share. I only just caught this. One of our members shared this in the Facebook group. I just caught this a couple of hours ago, so I haven't had time to ask permission, so I'm not going to share this person's name, but this just was one of our members in our Facebook group. And this is what she'd said. She said, I managed to get up off the floor from a kneeling position with no hands, 3 sets of 5 reps for each leg. I'm so ridiculously pleased with myself. I've not been able to do this with both legs since childhood. I know I can let you lovely people know since you understand this kind of process. So
that is
pretty cool
so
story there.
good.
Yeah.
So good. 3 rounds of getting up 5 times for each leg, and just, you know, to do something that you haven't been able to do since you were a kid. That is awesome. And
so that just shows, some of the benefit of regular strength training and doing this sort of stuff, doing those things that you find difficult and challenging, because the benefits are worth it.
Indeed. All right, well, on that note, Brodie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
We'll finish up the show there for today. Thank you for joining. As always, we'll be here again next Wednesday, 4 p.m. Sydney time, for another education topic and to answer any questions from our members or the wider community if you have them. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.